G'day guys, my name's Nick and this is Nicktrition. In today's video, I'm going to explain everything you need to know about intermittent fasting, including the benefits, the drawbacks, and why it's my personal choice when it comes to restricting calories for fat loss. In recent years, intermittent fasting has become more and more popular, and for good reason too. You see, there's 1,000,001 diets out there that ask you to reduce or completely eliminate your intake of certain food groups and nutrients, and it's pretty likely that some of them contain your favorite foods. In fact, intermittent fasting has become so popular that there are now two variants recognized in the research. There's your standard intermittent fasting that most people have heard of, where you reduce or completely eliminate your energy intake from anywhere between 16 to 48 hours a number of times per week or per month. And then there's time-restricted feeding, which generally has a frequency of between 5 and 7 days per week. And this includes a time where you start eating every day and a time where you stop eating every day. And that eating window can be anywhere between 1 meal a day to 8 to 10 hours. But regardless of whether it would be referred to as time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting, I'm probably going to include variations of each type in this video, and I'm probably just going to call it all intermittent fasting for the sake of ease. It's worth noting that intermittent fasting is going to work better for some people than it will for others, and regardless of whether you find it easy or not, it's not a magic pill. As I've touched on already, there are a number of different types of intermittent fasting, and in this video I'm going to cover the most popular variations. Don't worry if your favorite type is not covered in this video, they all pretty much work the same way, and the duration of your feeding to fasting windows is kind of just up to personal preference. The most popular and probably the most accessible is the Eat Stop Eat variation, also known as a 5-2 diet. Essentially, you eat however many days you want, you stop for a day, and then the next day you go back to eating. And you can have as many stop days as you like per week. In the 5-2 diet, you obviously have 5 days of feeding and 2 days of fasting. The next most popular is probably the feeding window variation. And this is where you fast until a certain point during the day, you then have a feeding window of however many hours, and then you continue fasting again until the next day. For most people, this will be daily or at least 5 days a week, and for most people, the feeding window will be anywhere between 4 and 8 hours, but some people do take it to extremes and will have a feeding window of as little as 1 hour or 1 meal a day. Some people will call it OMAD, 1 meal a day. Next up, we have alternate day fasting, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. You eat one day, you fast the next, you eat one day, you fast the next, and so on and so forth until you want to stop. This diet will take on different forms. Some people will eat for 12 hours, fast for 36 hours. Some people will eat for 24 hours and fast for 24 hours. It doesn't really matter. You obviously just have one where you eat for longer and one where you fast for longer. And the last one I'm going to cover here is the random meal skipping, which is, again, just like it says on the tin, you randomly skip meals throughout the week. As I said, there are a number of different variations, and technically everyone is doing a form of intermittent fasting anyway. You're usually not eating while you're sleeping, so you have a period of fasting, and then when you wake up and start eating, you then have a period of eating until the end of the day when you stop eating again and you repeat. So you're kind of just managing the times where you start and stop eating for some of these, and for some of them you're just waking up and not eating at all that day. All in all, the option you choose and the choice you make will pretty much come down to preference and adherence. Preference because you want to choose something you would prefer to do. If you prefer to eat 1 meal a day, then that might be a good choice for you. If you prefer to eat a day, skip a day, then that's probably a good choice for you. And adherence because if you can't stick to eat a day, skip a day, then it's probably not the option you should choose anyway. So now that we know the types of intermittent fasting, it's probably a good idea to go over the reasons why people would consider intermittent fasting. The two most popular reasons are for the effect on weight and the effect on health. Intermittent fasting can be a good way to lose or maintain your weight, and it does this primarily by decreasing your calorie intake. If you weren't aware of energy balance and how that affects weight gain and weight loss, you should probably check out this video here. The good news is that assuming calories are equal, intermittent fasting is equally as good for weight loss no matter which variation you choose, or if you choose not to do it at all. I find the biggest impact that intermittent fasting has on weight loss is the ability to improve your adherence. You see, being hungry for a period of the day and then being satiated for a period of the day is often easier for people to adhere to than being just a little bit hungry all day. The big takeaway is that intermittent fasting is not a magic bullet and still requires you to adhere to the laws of thermodynamics, that being that you need to consume less energy than you expend to lose weight, and if you consume more energy than you expend, you'll likely gain weight. The next reason why people consider intermittent fasting is for the effects on health. The body of evidence for intermittent fasting in humans is still relatively small, but there are a number of studies that report improved health markers apart from weight. However, it's still an active debate on whether intermittent fasting has any unique metabolic benefits over just chronic calorie restriction. The most intriguing of these debated benefits is prolonged life. Now, it's long been known that calorie restriction, whether through intermittent fasting or chronic calorie restriction, can slow the aging process and increase the lifespan in many animal models, but this is yet to be shown in humans. Basically, there's some preliminary evidence that suggests that fasting could have some unique metabolic benefits, including extension of lifespan, but there needs to be further research in humans as opposed to just in animal models. So now that you know all the important stuff there is to know about intermittent fasting, how do you do it? Is it really as simple as don't eat while you're fasting and while you're feeding, eat? Well, kinda and kinda not. You see, while you're fasting, it's important to stay hydrated, but you're not just limited to water. Staying hydrated can mitigate some of the negative side effects such as headaches and those really big hunger pangs, but also you can drink things like black coffee no sugar, black tea no sugar, 0-calorie beverages to try and help you feel like you're not fasting, even though you are fasting. And while you're feeding, it's important you don't compensate for the calories you didn't eat while you were fasting. So if your feeding window means that you skip breakfast, you don't want to then include those calories in the later portion of the day while you are eating. That is, of course, unless you're trying to gain weight, but if you're trying to gain weight, I wouldn't really recommend intermittent fasting anyway. Now, depending on your favored IF variation, you may find that it's pretty easy to overeat during your feeding period, that it kinda undoes any calorie deficit you created during your fasting period. So it's a pretty good idea to maintain some sort of control and not just have it like a green light, go and eat all you can until the red lights stop. That will pretty much end up in some fat gain, especially because you're probably not initiating muscle protein synthesis often enough to elicit muscle gain. If you have impaired glucose response, you're pregnant, you're under the age of 18, you're underweight, or you're trying to gain muscle, then IF is probably not the diet for you. However, if you're trying to lose weight, then it might be a good strategy you can employ. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like me, please consider subscribing. Until next time, I've been Nick, this has been Nicktrition, and I'll see you in the next video.